Yo, welcome back to Eat, Sleep, Breathe Hoops with your boy, Nikki P. Y'all know what it is. Thanks for tapping in. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Y'all saw the thumbnail. Y'all saw one of the most iconic pictures of all time, man. Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to take you back to a single night, a single arena, a single performance. When it came to Wilt Chamberlain and his 100-point game, we're going into a full deep dive, touching on every aspect that led up to that game and the aftermath that followed. This was a mythical day on March 2nd of 1962 in Hershey, Pennsylvania. The Hershey Sports Arena, a small concrete barn, more used to minor league hockey and local events than the grand moment of history, became the stage for something that has not been repeated in the modern era. Wilt Chamberlain scoring 100 points in one NBA game. That night is equal parts numbers and atmosphere, awe and awkwardness, triumph and complicated consequence. Let's unpack it all. The game itself, the people in the building and beyond, the country it happened in, the oddities around the documentation of the record, and the long shadow it casts up through Kobe's 81 and to the question so many of us now ask, will we ever see dominance like that again? The basic facts, so we all have the frame. On March 2nd, 1962, Wilt Chamberlain, playing for the Philadelphia Warriors, scored 100 points in a 169-147 win over the New York Knicks at Hershey Sports Arena. He shot 36 for 63 from the field. Y'all probably don't even understand how well conditioned you have to be to even get 63 shot attempts up in a game, let alone make over half of them. And he shot 28 for 32 from the foul line. He played the full 48 minutes, no breaks, no nothing. The crowd was small by modern standards, roughly 4,000, a little over 4,000 people, and the game was not televised and covered by a very limited press corps. Those numbers are the bedrock of the story. The arena, the crowd, and the feel of the place. Hershey's Arena in 1962 was intimate and concrete. Think of a hockey barn, low rafters, short sight lines, the smell of leather and linoleum, the sound of sneakers bouncing close overhead. The NBA in the early 1960s was not the global business it is now. Teams played small market games. The Warriors were in Philadelphia then and would soon move, and many games were scheduled in outlying towns to draw regional fans. The atmosphere that night, by eyewitness accounts, was part sports event, part carnival. About 4,100 spectators were watching, and as the total rose, it became clear Wilt could chase triple digits. The crowd grew louder and more single-minded. Give it to Wilt! Give it to Wilt! A chant not for team nuance, but for history. Inside that small arena, the temperature outside may have been bone-chilling. Record shows Hershey, Harrisburg area, temps on that day hovering around a very cold single digits or low tens. It was early March, but the basketball was played inside and the focus quickly narrowed to the game itself rather than weather details. The point is, the room was small, the crowd was vocal, and the space constrained, a human stage for a human giant. The teams and the score, not a close secret at all. The Warriors beat the Knicks 169-147. That final score tells us something important. Wilt's 100 points didn't come in a 60-point blowout where teammates stopped trying. It came in a very high-scoring game on both sides. The Knicks were, at that point, a struggling franchise. They finished down in the standings that season, and they played hard to defend Wilt. But the game's pace and defense that night facilitated an enormous combined scoring total, 361 points to be exact, that still stands out today. Wilt's scoring that night broke more than one record, single game points, free throws made, and contributed to the most combined points in a single game, and especially in today's era where we're thinking they're scoring way more than ever. Y'all go back and do your history. What the players and the coaches were saying before, during, and after. Unlike modern Superfest, where PR teams choreograph sound bites and pregame narratives, the 1962 league was more low-key. Pregame quotes are scarce, and the press presence was limited. Part of the myth is that newspapers and TV didn't capture everything, but we do have recollections and later interviews that color the human side. Wilt himself, he was famously cool in interviews, with a complex mix of bravado and seriousness. He later said he didn't necessarily know he was making history in the exact moment. He was focused on doing what his team was doing in that stretch and on continuing to score. He also later suggested that such a record could be broken. He didn't treat it as untouchable. his teammates. Many teammates later said that they wanted Wilt to get the record. Once it became plausible, the team increasingly fed him the rock. Al Attles, a teammate that night, explained that the team wanted to see their big man get the record because they respected him and they liked him. Teammates sensed the moment and cooperated. This cooperation is central to any modern discussion about whether the record could be equaled. Would competitive balance and coaching ethos allow a similar feed for a single player? Knicks and the opponents. For the Knicks side, there's complexity. Darrell Imhoff, the Knicks center, who is often referenced in narratives about the night, did not play the entire game and wasn't on the floor when Wilt hit 100. He and others were criticized unfairly over the years. The reality is, the Knicks tried different schemes, double teams, fouling, triple teams, running the clock, but nothing stopped Wilt that night. It was just one of those nights. Historical accounts underscore that the Knicks defended as best as they could and were humiliated by the media myth than by the on-court tactics themselves. Coaching approaches then were less media-driven, but accounts indicate the Warriors' coaching accepted the momentum shift. When a historic mark became plausible, the team increasingly ran plays to get Chamberlain the ball, whether that was tactical genius, opportunism, or whether it was just the best play on each possession every time. A search for glory is a matter of interpretation. Certainly the team rallied around him. The play. How did he actually score that 100 piece? Numbers tell the method. He was 36 for 63 from the field, a mixture of dunks, layups, middies, hooks, and bizarre strong 28 for 32 on the free throws, man. That gotta be 90-something%. Somebody do the math for me. Wilt's career free throw shooting was not great, so that 28 for 32 stands out as almost miraculous. He scored in every way he possibly could. Positioning in the post, quick hands, athletic finishes, running the court, finishes above the rim, under the rim, steady trips to the line, fadeaways. Playing all 48 minutes gave him the minutes required to accumulate such totals. Modern rotations and load management would make that improbable now. Or would it? Maybe he was just in way better shape and condition than a lot of athletes nowadays, which seems to be the case if you go back in time and study some of these greats. Before all the technological advances and all the recovery, you really had to get after it if you wanted to be that type of durable. He also had teammates who, once the crowd demanded it, deliberately gave him the ball to attempt the milestone. Joe Rucklick, an unlikely hero of that night, is credited with the assist on Wilt's 100th point, one of the small human details that prove how a historic night can hinge on a tiny fact. The documentation problem. No full film, only fragments and photos. One of the strangest, almost tragic aspects of the 100-point night is that there is no known complete film of the game. The NBA wasn't televised the way it is now. Press attendance was thin, and no television crew captured the full sequence. What remains are box scores, witness accounts, and a handful of photographs, the most famous being Wilt sitting on a bench holding a sheet of paper that reads 100. That photograph itself was improvised. Harvey Pollack, the Warriors statistics guru and PR man, scribbled 100 on a sheet and had AP press photographer Paul Vathis take the picture. Vathis later became well known and this image became iconic. The fact we don't have full footage has helped the legend grow. The story lives in numbers and in imagination. The pregame and the myth of Wilt's routine. There are colorful anecdotes about Wilt that night. Several long, retrospective pieces say Wilt had been out late the night before. Some accounts even suggest he was up until 6 a.m. and then still showed up and dominated. That's a different type of athlete, folks. That's similar to how Jordan used to be going out, playing a whole 18 round of golf the same day before a game, going to the game and dropping 40 plus and locking up on the defensive end. You know, some of these previous athletes, man, just because there wasn't footage like there is today, they was way better conditioned athletes than a lot of players in today's era. Wilt was known for his larger-than-life social life off the court. Those stories fit his persona. But precise details such as what did Wilt eat before the game are fuzzy in the historical record. Most contemporary reporting didn't inventory pregame meals for players the way beat reporting does now. Some later accounts note that he went to a local arcade and otherwise had an oddly relaxed pregame. Again, feeding the legend that his performance wasn't entirely engineered, but also born of Wilt's extraordinary natural gifts. It's safer to say the specifics on his menu that night aren't definitively recorded in primary sources, but witnesses remember a mix of nonchalance and singular focus. Interviews before and after, measured, astonished, and sometimes even awkward. Because the press presence was limited, the immediate post-game interview record is thin. Wilt gave terse, measured replies, and team staffers like Harvey Pollack helped manufacture the photographic moment. Teammates, coaches, and local reporters later reflected on the peculiar duality of the event, elation mixed with embarrassment. For the Warriors and their fans, it was pure joy. For some critics, it felt like a spectacle that didn't entirely respect the competitive integrity of the sport. Over time, interviews have shown Wilt himself saw the record as part of a career of many records. He at times dismissed it as a single night when compared to accomplishments like his rebounding feats, but he also understood its unique place in basketball lore. So whose idea was it really for that 100-sign photo? This is one of the delightful small-scale anecdotes that give texture to the myth. The famous image, Wilt seated, holding a piece of paper with 100 scrawled onto it, was Harvey Pollack's improvisation. Pollack scribbled the number on a sheet and handed it to Wilt. Associated Press photographer Paul Vathis shot the image. Vathis was at the game and later became a Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist. It's off of that iconic picture. So that simple, now iconic image was not the work of a corporate PR team, but a quick, human improvisation. Pollack's idea, Vathis' camera. And how did this game change Wilt's life? The 100-point game made Wilt into something beyond an elite athlete, a permanent, almost mythical figure in American sports culture. He was already a dominant player. He averaged an unthinkable 50 points a game that season, but this performance crystallized his place in history. That record transformed his brand, it cemented his legacy, but also intensified the complicated narratives about him. Wilt was a polarizing figure in some circles, celebrated for dominance, but sometimes criticized and self-promoting. And the 100-point game fed both the admiration and the critique. It opened commercial doors and historical doors alike. Wilt became an unavoidable reference point for conversations about athletic supremacy, showmanship, and the boundary of single-game achievement. Did Wilt know right away he had made history? He knew he had hit 100 as it happened. There's no mystery that he had those on the floor recognize the milestone, but the sense of history, the national mythology, unfolded later. In the moment, he was more likely to be exhausted, elated, and bewildered. The lack of television and the sparse press coverage meant the full weight of what he accomplished seeped out over the following hours, days, and years. The iconic photo, the box score, the local newspapers, that's how the story spread. Over subsequent decades, as journalists and historians revisited the night and Wilt himself reflected on it, the narrative hardened into legend. The racial backdrop of 1962 America, why this night mattered beyond sports. We cannot discuss any major black athlete's achievement in 1962 without acknowledging the larger American context. The country was in the thick of the civil rights era. The Freedom Rides in 1961 had exposed the violent resistance to desegregation in the South. The integration of the University of Mississippi, the Ole Miss riots, would erupt in 1962. The March on Washington was a year away. Black Americans were pressing for equality in de jure and de facto ways, and the national images of black excellence, athletes, artists, intellectuals, carried more than aesthetic value. They were moral and political symbols as well. For many African American observers, Wilt's night was another example of black excellence that contradicted narratives of inferiority. For some white observers, it was awe. For others, discomfort or dismissal. It's fair to say that the record entered into a nation already wrestling with race, and it fed conversations about representation, access, and how black achievement was covered and celebrated, or sometimes minimized by the white press. Importantly, Wilt's fame unfolded in a time when black athletes were legitimately subjected to different treatment in travel, in accommodations, press coverage, and endorsement opportunities. The 100-point performance gave black communities a triumph to celebrate publicly and privately. It also meant Wilt, like the other successful black athletes, had to manage expectations and scrutiny in ways white athletes often did not have to do. The tension is part of the historical significance. How the NBA changed, or didn't, after this game. The 100-point game itself didn't immediately revolutionize roar style, but it contributed to several larger arcs. Myth-making and marketability. The record became a branding cornerstone for the league's historical narrative. As the NBA grew, it used such legends to celebrate its past. The story of Wilt and Hershey's became part of the league's lore and marketing, a North Star for records that matter. Media coverage and television. The fact that there was no film of the game became an impetus, among many others, for the NBA and networks to expand televised coverage. Sports television was expanded in the 1960s, and the lack of tape for Wilt's night was a reminder that some moments could be lost. Over the decades, the NBA's embrace of television changed how records are documented and celebrated. Competitive ethos and integrity. Some critics argued the Warriors' intentional feeding of Wilt to reach the milestone was at odds with sports purity. That debate has continued across sports. When does pursuing a personal record conflict with team objectives? We saw that happen when Devin Booker dropped his 71. I think they were in a blowout loss. They were getting blown out, and they just decided to keep feeding Devin Booker the ball just so he could go get, eclipse 70, which is, at that point, you ain't even trying to win the game no more, so what's the point? Back to this. The Warriors won that night by a big margin, so the argument is academic in this case, but the conversation added nuance to how the league and fans think about individual accomplishments. Kobe's 81 and the proximity to a modern repeat. Fast forward to January 22nd, 2006, another mythical day. Kobe Bryant scored 81 points for the Los Angeles Lakers in a win over the Toronto Raptors. Kobe's night is often invoked as the modern era's closest approximation to Wilt's. Kobe's 81 was televised, filmed from multiple angles, and took place in the TV era, so it's far better documented, and yet the differences are telling. Kobe's 81 came in 42 minutes and involved a different era's rules, three-point shooting, and dramatically more media-driven ecosystem. Wilt's 100 came when players routinely played every minute. Kobe's 81 came in a rotation era with more substitutions and different defensive schemes. The modern era's superstar culture, load management, and parity make orchestrating a single player scoring night more complicated. Coaches, fans, and opponents are less likely to tactify or reshape a game to feed a single record. So is the record unbreakable? Statistically and practically, it looks extremely unlikely. Kobe's 81, the modern era's highest single game total, still sits 19 points shy of Wilt. Even in the modern era, fast-paced, high-scoring environment, the combination of pace, minute distribution, defensive focus, and league expectations make 100 almost impossible. Wilt's combination of size, stamina, playing 48 minutes, and a different competitive environment was unique. Many analysts now agree the record is just as close to untouchable as any in professional sports, but untouchable isn't impossible, just astronomically unlikely. Could the circumstances of today even produce a 100-point game? To get to 100 in today's NBA, a player would likely need to have the durability and stamina to be able to go hard for an entire 48 minutes, which I don't think any player in the league currently has that right now. And they would need to average a historically high points per minute rate. To be given enormous offensive priority by teammates and coaches, which modern coaches may resist. And in today's game, a lot of players have incomplete games. They don't have complete games like a Kobe or a Jordan or other cats that, could score from all three levels with the utmost comfort and not get themselves into any uncomfortable situation on the court out there. So you would have to have a complete game to be able to do that, and to have an opponent either defensively compromised or willingly allowing the attempt. In Kobe's 81-point game, Jalen Rose noted how their coach refused to double him. They just kept guarding him single-handedly, switching players, switching defenders, but just kept guarding him man-to-man straight up without sending doubles or triples, which was turned out to be pretty dumb. Now they're in the history books. Add to that media environment and analytics, opposing coaches with game plans specifically, and the league's marketing would pressure narratives one way or another. And you see why a repeat is improbable, but improbability is not impossibility. A perfect convergence of factors could, in theory, make a 100-point night happen again. The question is whether the league, teams, and fans would let it, and whether it would be celebrated in the same way without the romance of a lone man in a barn in Hershey. The human aftershocks and legacy. Let's bring the story to a close by thinking of what this night meant culturally. Wilt's 100 is not only a box score, it's a photograph, a box score, a handful of recollections, and a magnet for arguments about greatness. How do you judge a player's career? By peak nights? By season averages? By championships? Wilt's record pushes us to grapple with definitions of dominance. It also reminds us that sports are played inside social currents. Wilt's performance took a place in the early 1960s when race, media, and the limits of the sports economy shaped what athletes could do and how their stories were told. The image of Wilt holding 100 is simple and striking, born of a gritty human improvisation, and that makes it feel authentic in ways slick PR photos rarely match. And finally, the record is a kind of invitation. It invites comparisons across eras: Kobe, David Thompson, David Robinson, and others. It invites us to ask what records tell us about sport and society, and it invites new generations to ask whether they value historical continuity or modern context more when measuring greatness. Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game exists at the intersection of individual brilliance, team cooperation, and a country wrestling with itself. The night in Hershey was both ordinary, an NBA regular season game in a small market, and utterly extraordinary. It showed what one athlete could do when skill, stamina, and circumstance collided. It illuminated the messy way history is recorded. A great night with no full film. It took place in a nation where race and representation were central questions, kind of like now. And it left a record that forces us to imagine the impossible. Will we ever see dominance like that again? Maybe not in the exact same statistical form, but we'll keep witnessing other kinds of dominance in seasons, in defensive mastery, in playoff moments, and those will create their own mythology. Wilt's night remains, for now, the mountain peak of a single-game achievement. Kobe's 81 is the modern climber's best attempt, and the rest of us stand below, craning our necks, trying to understand how one human could simply decide to rewrite the scoreboard. Thank you. Once again, it's your boy, Nikki P. This is Eat, Sleep, Breathe, Hoops. And until the next one, peace.